feel like it's 1977 all over again. I love it. Back at Shea. Hello, Mr. Kranepool. I interviewed you in your basement 3 years ago for New York One. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
All right.
Hello. Good. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I made it.
Well, we're so glad you're here because, you know, obviously what you're going through with your health situation, but we're so happy to see you here. And I just want to give you guys, so I'm sure you all know this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Mr. Kranepool paid for the Mets from 1962, their first year at the Polo Grounds, till 1979, 1,853 baseball games for the New York Mets.
Yeah.
No Met has played more games in the blue and orange than this man right here.
All right.
261 lifetime average, 118 home runs, 614 RBIs. He was an all-star in 1965. And, of course, a world champion in 1969, 50 years ago.
Okay. How many people are going to be at the reunion this year? Anybody? All right. The Mets are finally doing something, I think, at the end of June. The last weekend in June, in case they didn't announce it yet, I'm going to let you know it's the last weekend. I think it's that Saturday afternoon they're going to have a day game. And I asked them about a week or so ago, I did some function there. I said, I hope you're not going to have it after the game. You know, just like they did when they closed the ballpark after the game and the Mets lost and everyone left.
Oh, my God.
I said, hopefully they'll do it before the game. So they're going to do it before the game. So
I'm glad they learned from that experience because losing to the Phillies and not getting into the playoffs and then celebrating the end of Shea really sucked. I was there by myself. I bought one ticket. I went. I was in the upper deck, and it was a horrible experience.
I think the players the players were going to leave too. You know.
All right, Mr. Kranepool, let's start with this. It's 1962. You're 17 years old. You just graduated from James Monroe High School in the Bronx. You played basketball. You played baseball. And a guy named Bubber Gennard, who's a scout for the Mets, signs you to a free agent contract. And in September, you're brought up to the big club and playing at the Polo Grounds. And what was that like at 17 years old? But you just got out of high school, and all of a sudden you're playing Major League Baseball.
Well, that wasn't the whole story. Actually, I signed with the ball club in June. I joined them in California. And my opening night in the major leagues, I worked out, and I was there. Sandy Koufax pitched that night. If you look at the record books, Casey didn't put me in the game. I was there. But Koufax pitched a no-hitter and struck out 13. I thought I was going back to college right there.
Wow.
So September was nothing. I mean, I had already played a while, and that was fine. You had your feet on the ground. But, you know, as a youngster, they force-fed me to the major leagues. They wouldn't do that nowadays. They don't bring guys up until they're 22, 23, and give them a little more time to get some seasoning. I mean, look at Tebow. He's 31. They're going to finally bring him up.
Oh, we can't wait to see him at a Citi Field.
I might have to make a comeback. I'm 74.
You could probably still hit him. You made official Major League debut was at the Polo Grounds against the Cubs. I think it was September 22nd, 1962. And this is crazy. I didn't know this, but you actually came in for Gil Hodges, who was playing first base at the time, who was an original Met.
Well, Gil was with the ball club in the early years before we made a deal with Washington and became the manager down there. But he was the one instrumental mentally to teach me how to play first base, fundamentals, etc. And that's what a lot of guys, you know, used to do back in those days. The older players would help the younger players. I think this is the first season that the Mets are going to invite some of us old-timers to spring training. I'm hopefully going to spring training the 21st of February. And,
excellent.
They're bringing some of the guys back. I guess they're trying to do something with the 50th anniversary. I figure we might know something after all these years. But, you know, there's opportunities when you're talking to the players to pass along some of the information you have. Some of the guys would work with you. I mean, we have nothing to lose. I mean, the Mets certainly could help. We could have helped Mike Piazza years ago. You know, Mike was a great player and a good catcher. And when they tried to move him to first base, I mean, he had no clue about how to play first base, and they wouldn't let anybody work with him. They wouldn't even let Keith Hernandez, who was their announcer, because Mike came to me first and said, "Could I help you?" I said, "Sure, I can help you. I can help you in a room. You don't have to be on the field. You can work on footwork any place as long as you put a base down." I said, "But you got to get permission. I'm not allowed to go on the field," and we're not. So anyway, they couldn't get permission. So then I saw Keith Hernandez one day, and I said, "Keith, let me ask you a question." I said, "You know, you're working for the ball club. You're the broadcaster. Why don't you work with Mike? He needs some help around first base." He had no idea how to play. He was actually touching the base with the wrong foot. Okay, and then when I saw that on TV, I said, "I can't believe it." I said, haven't worked with him. So I said, "Keith, why don't you work with him?" He said, "I'm not allowed to do that." I said, "I don't understand it. You've won 10 gold gloves." I said, you know, he asked me to help him. I said, "But you've won 10 gold gloves." He said, "No, Ed, I've won 11.
Sounds like Keith, right?
But
Yeah.
but Keith wasn't allowed to help Mike, and then Mike wouldn't play first base. Nobody wants to be embarrassed when they go on the field. I remember when Willie Mays came to the ball club, they tried to make him a first baseman. He was the greatest center fielder ever. He didn't want to play first base, so when Yogi put him at first base, he stayed there a few innings. When it came to the 7th inning, he used to come over to me and said, "Here's your glove, Ed, go out on the field." He wouldn't go out there in the 8th and 9th inning because nobody wants to lose the ball game in a position that you're unaccustomed to. And it's the same way when I played the outfield. You know, I wasn't the greatest outfielder, but I played it because I wanted to get 4 at-bats. I'm in left field. If the manager's stupid enough to leave me in there in the 8th and 9th inning, we lose it because I don't catch a fly ball, that's his problem. He's the dummy. Yeah. And Willie wasn't going to take that chance, you know. So I think the older players can help the young guys and give them the right attitude, you know, because the Mets obviously struggled the last couple of years. They've made some changes. Yeah. They're making some changes, I think, for the better. This new general manager is trying. I mean, he is bringing all his own old clients to New York, but they can play some of these kids. So I think if you put them out there, you know, and you help them along the way, maybe we can get something going in New York. Because look, there's momentum in sports. You win and lose, you know, it's contagious. If they start off good, they started off good last year, then they faltered a little bit. But if they start winning some games, and you fans are the greatest, I mean, you never know. They might have lightning in a barrel.
I certainly hope so. Gosh, you know, I don't know how much longer I could take it. No, I'm kidding. So 1962, I was looking at the roster. I mean, it was a lot. You were very young, but there was a lot of veterans on the team. But were you able to learn from guys like you had Richie Ashburn, Gil Hodges, Frank Thomas, Don Zimmer, Joe Pignatato, Marv Thurberry, Duke Snyder, a lot of old Dodgers.
Snyder came in 63.
63, yeah.
Gil worked with me all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's how I knew how to play first base and defensively. I led the league in defense. I was .993 with my fielding average and stuff like that. I mean, so Gil was really great. And that's why he was such a great manager. And he should be in the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous that a guy like him is not in there.
Thank you.
You know, the guys voting these players in today never saw him play. I mean, he was in an era where it was not a live baseball year, but yet he was dominant in the National League. He had a lot of home runs, great ball club in Ebbets Field, great defensive player, and a good manager. So when you look at some of these other guys getting selected by the current writers, it's a disgrace because Gil has a better record than any of these guys.
Right, I think it's almost like if you combine his playing career and the fact that the 1969 Miracle Mets, who arguably probably one of the great championship teams in baseball history. I mean, come on, it's a no-brainer to me. But
well, we were a good ball club, and we played as a team. We really showed you what baseball was supposed to be as a team game because everyone, if you contribute, and we all did, and you put the records together at each position, we had an outstanding organization that year. And we would have won more pennants, no question about it. We win more pennants if Gil's the manager. We win in 73. We did not lose that one. We should have beat Oakland. That was a disgrace that we lost, but you know what?
On 7 games, yeah.
You know, we made a managerial mistake. I mean, and that's what happens in a short series. Over the course of a season, just about any manager can win because if you have good talent, that's going to survive. Because remember, it's a marathon. It's not a race. But when you get to the playoffs, it's short series. It's 3 games, it's 5 games, it's 7 games. You make a couple mental mistakes or you play the wrong players, you're going to lose and you're out of the series. We lose because Seaver pitches the sixth game. He had no reason to pitch the sixth game. We had George Stone to pitch. Seaver should have pitched the seventh if there was a seventh game. Who's to say there was? George was 12-3 that year. Why take him out? I mean, if a guy wins all those games in a row like George did down the stretch, I got to pitch him. Why rush Seaver back short rested? You know, imagine having Seaver to start on Sunday and say, Tom, give me 3 innings. It's unheard of. Because then you could bring in Matlack. You could bring in Kuzman. You could bring in the whole, you have 9 guys on Sunday. George Stone could have pitched 9 innings on Saturday. We could have lost 20-0. It wouldn't have made a difference because we had to show up Sunday anyway. We couldn't figure out, our management couldn't figure out we didn't have to win Saturday. We had to win Sunday. And we lose the pennant, we never recovered.
Yeah, and 73 was an interesting year because the record wasn't great and only won 80-something games.
We had a lot of injuries.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
had a
but
lot-
somehow
and that's
still
like-
won the division.
Well, we got hot the second half of the year. The last 6 weeks, everyone was healthy, and you know, guys played very well down the stretch. And that's what I say. It's not a race. It's a marathon. When you have injuries, you know, you're not going to win. That's why you load up. You look at some ball clubs are loading up. I mean, I don't know. We might have some Yankee fans here, but they're loading up. They've got all kinds of guys. You know.
I don't think. I hope not.
You know, because they anticipate guys along the way getting hurt. And the Mets have the same thing. They have a lot of infielders and stuff. Guys play multiple positions. That's what you need. Because the way the game has changed and they're using that pitching staff, you don't need as many players on the bench. They're not going to get in the game anyway. You keep the best players out there. That's why in the American League with the DH, it doesn't help everybody. The DH only helps the guy that's the DH. The other guys sit on the bench and never hit because you're playing your 9 best offensive players. So, you know what? A lot of guys are hurt by the DH.
Let's go back. I want to go back to '69 since we're talking about the 50th anniversary, beating the Orioles in the World Series. When did you start knowing, since you were there from '62? Because obviously, from '62, '63, '64, '65, the Mets, sadly, it was kind of, didn't have the best reputation in baseball. When did you start kind of feeling, wow, we have a show. This could be a good team in a couple of years? Was it when Seaver? I'm guessing when Seaver joined the team and Kuzman and
In '62?
No, for '69. When did you start kind of having a feeling that things were going to get on the? Was it that year, or did you kind of say,
Well, we went to spring training under Gill. He had managed in '68, and we improved. Still a 9th place club that year, but he said to us in the spring, set your goals to each pitcher to win 1 more ball game, and defensively, the regular players just make fewer mental mistakes. You're going to win more games when it comes down the stretch. Let's get to 500 first. Let's take little steps, and we'll see how we go. Once we got into June, we went to California. We beat the West Coast teams. Now, we never beat the California teams, especially with Koufax and Drysdale. Then you go down the coast, and you got Juan Marichal and Gaylord Perry and all these other guys down there. We used to celebrate rainouts. That's when we celebrate rainouts. I mean, it was crazy. We couldn't win a game. We came back on that trip.
Woo, it's raining.
And we won 10 games, on the West Coast trip. Then we faced Chicago in New York, and they ran into a hot team, and we beat them 4 straight in New York, and that was the start of it. I mean, we really started playing great baseball.
So then you go play the Braves, and they have Hank Aaron. And was there any thought at any moment in your mind that we're going to win the World Series this year? Or when did you start feeling like this is a good team?
We just knew we were a good team. Once we got to 500, we had never been at that plateau late in the year.
Yeah, go figure.
We were sniffing that altitude, It was really funny. I mean, we were always eliminated at the All-Star break. And Casey used to be funny when he'd break at the All-Star break. Usually you have 3 days off. But if you're a bad team, you should be working out. Go there and practice a little bit. He used to say, fellas, I'm giving you 3 days off, but take your records with you. And when you figure out what he said, you were in last place. He's just giving you a 3-day vacation, really.
So, as your career, one of the things that when I first started going to Mets games was, and you guys were chanting it right off the bat, Eddie, was pinch hitting. And, not everybody can be a good pinch hitter. Now, from 1974 to 1978, this is great, guys. You batted .396 as a pinch hitter.
Right.
And In 1974, you batted .486, going 17 for 35, and that's still a major league single-season pinch hit batting average record. But
Right.
but if you're sitting on the bench for a couple of days, you're not playing, you're cold, and all of a sudden, like the manager's like, "All right, you're up." How do you do it?
Well, you can't do it that way. That's impossible. Back when I played, we didn't have all these conditions they have now. Now they have cages underneath and heaters and stuff like that. We didn't have that. So what I used to do is, I knew when I was going to pinch hit. It was never going to be when the game was out of line. If we were losing by 3 or 4 runs, I'm not going to pinch hit. It was always a tight game. It was a winning situation. I would have to pinch hit. So I would prepare myself in the 5th inning for something I was going to do in the 9th inning. I already knew who I was going to face because the best reliever was coming in, and I'd have to face him in a key situation. So I'd get my equipment, I'd put the pine tar on it, do whatever I have to. I'd go down below, and I'd loosen up. I'd go in the clubhouse, try to get warm, and do what you have to do and then when you went up to the plate, you were ready, because if you're just sitting there like you guys are doing out there and they say, go hit, and you pick a bat up, you can't stand in the on-deck circle for 15 minutes because everybody in the ballpark screaming and yelling, let's get the game going. I mean, it's too slow. So you got to be ready to hit, so prepare yourself. I had my bat. In the 7th inning, I'm sitting with my bat, so that was ready. The 8th inning, I was ready to go, and situation came up. I was mentally prepared. Physically, I was ready. And I walked up there, I took 1 or 2 swings, and I was ready. And I think I lulled the pitchers to sleep for the simple reason they always figured a guy sitting on the bench for so long, he's going to come up and be stiff. How's he going to hit? So they try to get ahead of you with a fastball or something like that. And you know what? I was ready to hit, and I hit a line drive and get a base hit. And they say, how the hell did he do that? Well, it's easy when you're ready for it. Otherwise, if you're starting to take. And I had that situation last year when the Mets were struggling. Some of the young kids they have a couple good outfielders. Nemo and the left fielder is Fordo.
Yeah.
And, when they were pinch hitting, they were struggling. And I spoke to Nemo about it. I said, Nemo, when you're playing regularly, you have an opportunity. You can take a lot of pitches. I noticed that he used to like to work the account. But I said, as a pinch hitter, you don't have that luxury. You can't do that because the pitcher gets ahead of you, 1-2, 0-2, you're out. You might as well forget it because he's going to make that good pitch low and away, or, he's going to get you out. He can fool around with you for 3 pitches. I said, so be aggressive, be ready to do it. And Jeff Wilpont was standing alongside of me. It was the funniest thing. And after the conversation, he says to me, oh, you do know something. I said, I guess so. I said, Jeff, I led the league 5 years in a row and hit over 400 as a pinch hitter. I said, they got to be ready to hit. They can't be sitting there. I felt like saying, I've been around for a long time. I could help you over the years, but it is what it is,
That's crazy.
But they invited me out there that night. He's been very nice. I threw out the first ball, and they've gotten me some publicity for my situation where I need a kidney, and they've been very good about it. So that's why he's asked me to go to spring training. I guess he figures maybe I can help some of the guys. But, if you pass some of these little tips along to the guys, it helps them. And Nemo, he's a good little player. They didn't trade him this year. I'm glad they didn't. Give him an opportunity to play. I mean, he got a chance.
And it's good. You still follow the team, which is great. I think when I talked to you at your home, I think it was like right during the 2015 World Series, you were really up to date. You were watching, so that it's nice to see.
I know. I do watch the game. I watch the Mets. I root for them. I'm a New York fan. I watch the Yankees also. I mean, people don't want to hear that, but I do. I was brought up in the Bronx. I was a Yankee fan growing up. I was brought up in the Bronx, and I wound up signing with the Mets. But the thing is, I like to see good baseball. So if you can, be part of it. During the season, I watch it. I switch channels to different things. The playoffs, I love it. And I want to see all the New York teams do well. I mean, that's great for the city.
And the game, obviously, I remember when I first started going to baseball games in the late 70s, you can get out of there in maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes. The games are too long now. They're very long. What are some of your thoughts on the length of the game and how the game has changed?
I don't understand what the pitchers are looking at the catcher so long about. You know, they're staring in there and they throw a fastball down the middle. I mean, you don't have to think about it unless you're just worried about throwing it. You know, that must be it because the games are much too long, no question about it. You know, they're trying to speed it up. The catcher, they've cut back some of those trips to the mound. I mean, that was ridiculous. I mean, anytime our guys went out to the mound, it was where we going tonight for dinner. That's about it. What are you going to tell Tom Seaver? I mean, he's going to throw you off the mound, just like Bob Gibson used to do that. You know, to Johnny Keane. I used to hear him yell at him, "Get back in the dugout. You don't know anything about pitching." You know?
Even Rube Walker?
Well, Rube didn't say anything.
Yeah,
If Gil came out, you know, nobody said a whole lot to Gil. You know, Gil was a tough guy. You know, he was a Marine. You know, strict background.
Right, you don't want to mess with Gil. So but guys like Kuzman, Seaver, they had no tolerance for that kind of thing. They're just like pitch, and that's.
Well, they know how to pitch. I mean, we'd go over there and try to slow him down because sometimes when a pitcher's struggling, he's going to work too fast.
Mm-hmm.
So you give him a little pace, you know. But what am I going to tell Tom Seaver how to pitch? I mean, Jerry Kuzman, you know, forget about it. You know, my roommate Tug McGraw, maybe that's a little different because Tug we talk about it at nighttime and stuff like that. But
and Tug was a true character, though. What was it like playing with him? Because I mean,
he was a character,
yeah.
no question about it. He got us in trouble all the time, you know. Can't tell too many stories. My wife's not here, you know. I guess that's wrong.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't want to get you in trouble with your wife. She's not here. Hopefully, she's not. But I mean, you guys were New York celebrities, and you know, I just watched a documentary about Joe Namath the other night, Bachelors 3, and the whole thing. And I mean, wow, it looked like it was some good times back then. I mean, you guys had you know.
You have to ask Jim Bouton. He always blamed it on the other guy. You know, no, we had a great time. New York was the greatest sports town around. Where can you be 50 years after the fact, still talking about the '69 Mets? Most people, they forget. I can't tell you who won the World Series 5 years ago. I mean, but people do know that the Mets won in '69. They still celebrate. The fans are great. You know, that's why New York is a great baseball town, and you want to have a winner here. If you win in New York, you can go anywhere.
Was it good? I mean, are you pleased looking back on your life that you were able to stay in your hometown, that you didn't have to go play for the Twins or the Royals or you know?
Well, I wouldn't play for the Twins at the end of my career. Gene Mark, who I hated from 1965 on, he invited me to play for the Twins in 1980, and I said, "Are you crazy?" I said, I had played in the All-Star game in '65, and there were 5 of us he didn't put in the game. And I never liked him from that day on, and every time we had a chance to play against him in Philadelphia or wherever he was, I tried to beat him. And you know what? Because you don't forget little things. I mean, certain things stay with you. And then when he said, "Come and play for me in 1980, I said, "You crazy? I wouldn't leave New York. I stayed in New York and retired, you know. I haven't sent my papers in yet, so I guess I can still make a comeback." You're supposed to actually send in papers for that. Supposed to send in papers.
I don't know if Gene Mark's still active, but
No,
I'm kidding.
No.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I want to do a little have a little fun with a little lightning round here. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and I'm going to see what you. So first one is, I'm sure you've been asked this a billion times, but the best pitcher you ever faced.
Well, that would be Sandy Koufax, but he was not the toughest pitcher that I ever faced. The toughest pitcher was Joe Negro. And he had that knuckleball, and it was bouncing around. The catcher with a big glove like this couldn't catch it. How am I going to hit it with a round bat? You know, round bat and a round ball. So I used to, have struggle with him, go 0 for 4, 0 for 4, and then finally late in my career, when he was still pitching, I was friendly with the manager. I said, "Joe, I got a headache." So he took me out. I'd rather pinch hit in the ninth, Bring in a relief pitcher.
Well, are there certain guys? Because I remember specifically that Tommy Hutton on the Phillies killed Seaver. For some reason, right. Seaver could not get Tommy Hutton out. It made no sense. Is that? But that's just
happens. It happens. Yeah. It all depends on certain guys, and you can hit. If you feel better, you feel more comfortable. I mean, I did great against Gibson. Nobody really makes a living out of Gibson. I'd get 2 hits a night against Bob Gibson because he would always challenge you to a fastball or a slider. And he'd throw that to me, and I'd get a base hit. And so I didn't have a problem with that. But Negro throwing that 60-mile-an-hour knuckleball. He knew the situation. He said, this guy can't hit it. I'm not going to throw him anything different. Well, other guys would get an occasional fastball, which is about 60 miles an hour, and they get a base hit. Me, he says, here, hit it if you can. You know, he knew I didn't have a tennis racket, so, you know, I couldn't hit it. I struggled.
Yeah, and Gibson also was very intimidating, but you weren't. I guess that's a big part of it because he was an intimidating pitcher. Like, and you would maybe not want to bat against him in some cases.
Well, yeah, you can't let any pitcher intimidate you. You do that, you're in trouble. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, then you think you can't get a hit, you're out. You know.
Now I know you were Mickey Mantle was your idol growing up.
He was my idol growing up. I was a Yankee fan.
Yeah.
People, you know, they don't want to hear that, but I grew up in the Bronx. Who did I have to root for? The Dodgers, hated them. The Giants, my mother rooted for the Giants or the Yankees, and I was a Yankee fan. They won every year, you know, so I'd go and get free tickets onto milk bottles and stuff like that, or the Journal American back in those days would have tickets for us, and we'd go see the Yankees play. And you know what? You saw Mickey, Roger, and all those guys in the heyday. I mean, they were great. Yogi.
Was he the best hitter you ever got to see in person, or did you? Or
Best hitter?
Yeah, who would you say your best hitter over the years as you through the career? I know you got to see all kinds of, you know.
Well, Roberto Clemente could be the greatest hitter, you know. I mean, but he hit 350 every year. But, you know, he didn't have the power that these other fellows had. Then later on in his career, he got a little more publicity, but he was a great player. When I made the All-Star team in '65, I was with all Hall of Famers. If you look up that roster, I mean, it was unbelievable. And I'm looking around, and you know, you're in awe of all these guys. These are guys I grew up with as a kid watching play. And then you get a chance to play against them. It was a tremendous thrill. But, you know, I wish I would have been with a better ball club early on. If you joined a better team, you become a better player when you surround yourself with better players. And that's what the Mets have to do now, to surround those young kids with better players, and they become better because a pitcher can't pick on the left fielder, Conforto or Numo or whatever. That's why they're a better team when Cespedes is in the lineup. I was a better hitter when Rusty joined the ball club, and even guys like Dave Kingman, who was not a great team player, but you put him behind you, he was always could hit that home run. They'd say, well, I'll pitch to Ed, maybe he won't hit a home run, and if I get a base hit, then Kingman hits something. So you become a better offensive player.
Quick story, guys. You know, Dave Kingman, when I was a kid, I went up to him in the parking lot at Shea to get an autograph, and he was 6'6", and I don't think he saw me, and he knocked me over. Anyway, so I was like, Mr. Kingman, ah! This is true story.
I thought you were going to say he dropped the ball.
Well, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. No, he hit some serious shots, Dave. I mean,
he could hit the ball as far as anybody in baseball, and that was before the lively ball, you know, and before steroids. I mean, I never saw a guy hit a ball further than Dave in batting practice. He put on a show in Chicago and everything else. I mean, he hit balls out of sight in spring training in Fort Lauderdale. He hit a ball over left field fence, I think, against Catfish. I think it's still going.
wow.
And put it in orbit. You know, I mean, he was tremendous. He hit a ball out of the stadium in Montreal. He did some feats that, you know, you haven't heard about. And the only other big shot I've ever seen was Tommy Agee's shot at Shea Stadium up in that left field stands.
Best player you played with on the Mets. Right.
Well, Willie Mays, he
right.
joined us later on, but
yeah,
he was the best player I ever saw play. For the Mets, you know, Cleon was a good player. You know, Cleon was a good hitter. He could do everything. You know, when he first came up, we signed together in '62, and we developed together. Cleon was a good player.
Tom Seaver.
Oh, Seaver was the franchise of the ball club, no question about it. I mean, he's the best pitcher I ever saw, and we were lucky to get him. We got him in the some kind of phony draft they had down there. I think Atlanta signed him up too early or something. They did something against the rules, and then we got another draft, and we picked him. Because remember, the Mets were not very good at drafting players. They were not very good at all. Look, we could have had, well, we had Chilcott, unfortunately. We didn't take Reggie Jackson, you know, so there were a lot of guys. Look at our number one picks, and they never developed. Les Rohr was a left-handed pitcher, wasn't good. Chilcott was a number one pick in the country, didn't develop, never got into the game.
Yeah. And no offense to Jim Fregosi, but trading Ryan for him, what were you guys thinking back then? I mean, did you think Ryan had some serious potential at that point? I would imagine he threw 100 miles an hour. I mean,
Well, when you throw 100 miles an hour,
yeah. I mean, I was a little wild, I know, but you know.
yeah, but you didn't want to face him in batting practice. I'll tell you what, he had a lot of potential. Would he would develop in New York? I don't know. He was not the star on our club. You have to remember, we had 3 great arms in '69. We had Kuzmin, you had Tom Seaver, and another kid that hurt his arm was Gary Gentry.
Yeah.
And he had bone chips. He was as good as the other 2. He really was. They didn't know how to do that surgery back in those days. Today, they would have scoped him out, and he would have been fine. So Nolan was always the odd man out. Would I have made the trade? I might have made the trade, but not for a guy that was past his prime and you didn't get a star back, because this guy could throw 100 miles an hour. When he was on, he was unhittable. And that was before these guns, before you knew how hard some of these guys threw. I mean, he was the hardest thrower in baseball. And he never had a bad arm. Pitch all the time. Look at the records he set. He couldn't pitch today. Of course, after 60 pitches, they take him out. It's like crazy. Yeah. He threw 200 pitches a game and was striking people out in the 9th inning. I mean, he was amazing. He was a freak of nature. But we never had a bad arm. Gentry was the only one that had bone chips. But Seaver never hurt his arm. Jerry Kuzmin had never hurt his arm. Nolan Ryan didn't hurt his arm. I mean, we had great pitchers.
Yeah, why do you think it's happening, though? Why do you think that, I mean, I'm frustrated that these guys can't go 4 and 5.
Well, they might be starting too early in life. I
Yeah.
mean, they're throwing hard. They're looking up at the machines. They're looking up at the scoreboard to say it's 100 miles an hour. What's the difference how hard you throw? If you're getting people out and you know how to pitch, you don't have to throw 100 miles an hour. I mean, the guy down in Atlanta, Maddox, won 300 and some odd games. He didn't throw real hard. A lot of guys didn't throw real hard, but they had perfect control. Juan Marichal threw hard, but not 100 miles an hour. But he had 5 pitchers to get you out with, and he got you out with a different pitch. Guys are too concerned about overpowering players. 100 miles an hour, they love it. They look at the scoreboard, and it's 101, 102. I mean, it's crazy. You throw the ball down the middle of the plate, these good hitters are going to hit it somewhere, over right field, left field, or whatever. At my age, I swear to you, I always had great eyes. That was part of my problem. When I swung the bat, I hit the ball. That works against you sometime when you're young and inexperienced. You're swinging at pitchers that are not in your hitting area, and now you ground out to second, shortstop, you put the ball in play. At my age, if you threw the ball down the middle consistently, hard, I'm going to hit it. Right now, it's 74. If you change speeds, I'll fall down and hit. I wouldn't hit anything, because now you can't hit a curveball. You can't hit anything. But one speed, you're going to time it like you go to these machines in the amusement parks. That one speed, you can close your eyes and hit those balls after a while. So you have to learn how to pitch inside, outside, up and down, and don't throw the ball down the middle. You throw the ball down the middle, guy gets a base hit. Read the books. The greatest hitter I ever saw was Ted Williams. Mm-hmm. And his books on hitting, he puts a graph and he puts the strike zone out there, and he shows you exactly what pitches you're going to hit, you're not going to hit. And you know what? He's right. Mm-hmm. Anybody can hit the ball down the middle. Move it around a little bit, and you'll see the difference. So if you're teaching the youngsters in the little leagues how to pitch, don't teach them a curveball. Don't teach them anything. Let them throw the ball straight, but move the ball around the plate and change speeds. That's all.
All right, Mr. Kranepool. So Keith, I think we're going to take some questions from the audience now. I know someone has a mic, and here we go. Here we go. Anybody got a call? Oh, here, right here, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Some questions for Mr. Kranepool.
Mr. Kranepool, can you tell us what it was like to be on Kiner's Corner? Maybe tell us a funny story or something you remember about being there.
Ralph was the greatest guy. He really was. We always loved to be with him. And he'd always give you a gift to go on there, whether it be a refrigerator or something else. later on, he gave you gas coupons, and that was pretty good. Sunoco, I think it was. I think that was one of our sponsors or something like that. He was a great guy, but he forgot so many guys' names at the end of his career, you know. Choo Choo Coleman, you know, he's crazy.
Who else? Anybody else? Sir, you're right there.
I got paid that night. No.
Tom
What story? Well,
Seaver trade.
the Tom Seaver trade. Tom Seaver got traded in the middle of the night. Joe McDonald made that trade. It was unbelievable. The Mets had a deal going with L.A. We thought we were going to trade Seaver to L.A., and how I knew that was Joe Torre was the manager. And Joe and I roomed together, okay, and we were very friendly at the time. And when he was talking to the Dodgers about it, he was involved in negotiations, and they gave him a list of 10 players to choose for Tom Seaver. They were going to give us 6 players for Tom Seaver. So Joe said to me, you take the list home, and I'll take it home, and tomorrow morning when you come to the ballpark, we'll compare lists to see which ones I'm going to take. He was working with Joe McDonald, so that I went home and looked at the list, and Joe did the same thing, and there were some good players on there. Pedro Guerrero, Nick Wilhite, Rick Rhoden, Lee Lacy. There were 6 good players on. So I had a list, and I put them down 1 through 6. And then Joe came the next day and did the same thing. Now, we had basically the same names, but not in the same order. Okay, my first was Lee Lacy. I don't know who, not Lee Lacy, it was Guerrero, who was a good young player, and he became a great hitter. And I don't know who Joe had. But anyway, that when he gets to the ballpark, he gets a call from Joe McDonald. He already traded Seaver the night before for, the guys on the Reds. He had no idea, never inquired with the manager. And that's why a lot of guys didn't want to manage, you know what I mean? They weren't running the ball club. If you're going to fire the manager, you should have some responsibility on trades. And that's, otherwise it becomes a problem. If you're going to give me players that can't play, don't fire me. And Joe was mad that we gave up Tom Seaver. Even though they were good players Cincinnati gave us, they were not what the Dodgers had offered. They had offered, we felt, better players.
Was it Pat Zachary, Doug Flynn?
Yeah, Norman, and Henderson.
Yeah,
Henderson.
The next day, he was my that was like one of the worst days of my entire life. Anyway, anybody else have a question for Mr. Kranepool?
Yeah.
Oh, back there.
Yeah. Hi, Ed.
Hi.
What were some of your favorite ballparks you hit in?
I love Chicago. I like to play in the daytime. I could hit better in the day. You could see better. I'd like to get there, and you like to get back to the hotel by 6 o'clock. You can go out for night, go have dinner at a normal time, et cetera, and it was a lot more fun. So Chicago was my best city. And then after that, let's see, it probably was St. Louis. I like to play in St. Louis. The AstroTurf was great to play on that. If you played there, you had to hit 30 points higher. That's why those averages so misleading, anyone on AstroTurf, as opposed to a regular grass field. The ball slows up in the grass, especially Shea Stadium had the worst grass in the world. It was very thick because of the dampness. It was built on a swamp, so the ball wouldn't go through the infield. Where if you have AstroTurf, if you hit a hard ground ball, takes one step away from the player, he can't catch it. It's a base hit. So now you get, it doesn't take half a dozen hits at the end of the year, and it's 20 points. So, I'd rather be on the AstroTurf. So St. Louis and Chicago. Chicago for hitting home runs and playing during the daytime.
Any other questions for Mr. Kranepool? Yeah, sure.
The Bud Harrelson-Pete Rose fight, it wasn't much of a fight, It's you're talking about a heavyweight against a lightweight, Buddy was a sweetheart. He's one of my closest friends, He had a lapse of memory, really. What happened is, during the course of the ball game, we were allowed to be aggressive on the bases back in those days. Now you can't even slide. It's crazy. So when Pete Rose is coming down the line, you don't stand there in the middle of the base path. Pete was out by 15 feet at second base. There's no question about it. Buddy had already thrown the ball over his head, and it was on the way to first base. And Pete just kept running right into him, and he, overly aggressive, no question about it. He was trying to excite his own team because they were losing. He was frustrated. But, he had no reason. He couldn't make it to second base. He might have been from here to the second pole that I'm from second base. He can't slide and get there, you know what I mean? There was no reason to knock over Buddy, but Buddy just stood there and bam, and it was over. But like Buddy said, he made Pete Rose famous with that fight.
And it started the great chant at Shea Stadium, if you remember. But I won't repeat it, what we used to say back then.
The fans were there
Yeah,
almost rioted that day.
We did not like Pete. It was fun every time he came up.
But he was a great player. You have to give him
Yeah,
credit.
of course, yeah.
Pete, didn't matter what position he played. He gave 100%, 200 hits at every position. Never made never made an excuse. Can't play third base. It affects my hitting. Can't play second base. Nothing affected his hitting. Nothing at all. This guy had tunnel vision. He could hit in nighttime. He didn't care. He didn't have to have lights. He'd still get a base hit.
Any other question? Oh, we got one way back there. Can we get them? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad.
Hey, Mr. Kranepool, thank you for being here. We know that we're all praying for your condition.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess just a quick synopsis. What was it like playing for Casey Stengel, Gil Hodges, and Yogi Berra?
Well, with Casey, it was a free-for-all out there. Anything went on. He was a happy-go-lucky guy that devoted all those years to baseball. He was great with the young players, okay, but he was having fun. He was at the twilight of his career. He didn't have the players. It was unfortunate. Gil was a strict disciplinarian, a Marine, and had one set of rules for 25 players. And you either played his way or you hit the highway. It wouldn't take anything from anybody. Didn't care who you were. If he had to say something to you, he'd call you in the room and, he'd lower the boom on you. You know what I mean? And you knew exactly what you were doing. Yogi was a sweet guy. He was a great guy. But in the third inning, in the ninth inning, he was worrying about things he did in the third inning. Instead of being in reverse, like Gil would think about things in the third inning for the ninth inning. He was a little bit lax in his preparation. But that's Yogi. Yogi was a great guy, though, But I would have rather had Gil going to war in the 7th game of the World Series.
Oh, way back there.
Maybe he wants to leave the room.
Oh, wait, we got one right here. I'm sorry, you'll be next. He's back there.
Ed, what were some of the stories that the players talked to you about when they got to first base?
Where they were going at night. And, a lot of guys love to come to New York, so they told you a lot of good stories about where they went at nighttime, The one guy I didn't want to see stay at first base was Richie Allen. And I'll tell you a quick story about him. Okay. We have time?
Yep, 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes, yeah.
5 minutes? Oh, okay. Richie Allen, didn't like the rules, and he didn't like Gene Marks, so he did whatever he wanted to do. He'd go into the track all the time, and he liked to drink. Never affected his play. He shows up the last day of the season. Okay, I guess it was maybe 68 or something like that. Anyway, Nolan Ryan's going to start that game. He's late to the ballpark. Gene Marks says, "I'll teach you a lesson." He puts him in the lineup. Now he gets into the game. He's drunk. The guy is completely wasted. Anybody else would be on the training table, and he's going to hit against Nolan Ryan. So we thought he's going to get killed. We said, this guy's going to walk into a fastball at 100 miles an hour because Nolan didn't know where it was going. He winds up, he hits 3 home runs that day. But I didn't want him to stop at first because he was drunk. I'll say, keep going. I didn't want to have his breath come on me. Forget about it, Knock me out. I had enough trouble when I was sober.
Yeah, and he had I think he had the heaviest bat in the major leagues too, Richie Allen. He was
Strongest guy. He never wore a short. You never saw him with a short sleeve shirt, if you noticed. Any picture you see of Richie Allen, he had a long sleeve wool shirt on. It must be 100 degrees. He's got a wool shirt on. He had the biggest arms you'd ever want to see, and had the heaviest bat in the National League. I think it was 42, 43. Yeah. Forget about it. I couldn't lift it up. I used it as the weighted bat. Couldn't swing that.
You got time for a couple more, sir, back there? Yeah.
So, Ed, I remember after Joan Payson died and the 2 daughters, the two daughters own the team, and then they put the team up for sale. And I remember that you were part of a group. You wanted to buy the team.
Right.
How many World Series would we have won?
You would have had a lot more fun, I think. You know, I don't think you would have been screaming and yelling. We should have had some fun. We should have bought the ball club. You know, it's crazy. When I negotiated, I tried to negotiate with Lorinda. That was in September of '79, and I knew the ball club was going to be for sale because Mr. Payson told me about it. He said, my daughter's going to sell the ball club. And I did have a group, and then I met with Mr. Bob Applenap, and he wanted me to join his group, which was himself. He said, I've got more money than you, and the after money is what you're going to need. And he was 100% correct. You know, you have to build a ball club. You can't stop with just your 25 players. You got to build a system, et cetera. And we tried to talk to Lorinda in September, which we did. I set that meeting up, and she wouldn't tell him how much she wanted for the ball club. He left her a check, and she didn't fill it out. And my wife, when I came home from that meeting, she said, how'd you make out today? I said, I don't know, but I think we bought the ball club. She said, you're dumber than I think you are. What do you mean you think? Weren't you at a meeting? I said, yeah, I was at a meeting. I said, but there was nothing signed. She didn't fill out a check. He left her a blank check and said, fill it out and let me know what you want. And never did it. And I went from the outhouse to the penthouse, from the penthouse to the outhouse, you know, because I thought I was on top of the world when I came home. And then she negotiated with her own friends. She bought the Doubleday Inn, Pickett, and then Wilpon came in the back door and became a 5%er, and he eventually had a disagreement with Doubleday, and that all blew up in everybody's face.
Well, Mr. Kranepool,
that's where you stuck.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. I just want to say thank you so much for being here at the Queens Baseball Convention.
Okay.
You're a true New Yorker. You're a true Mets legend. We hope to see you for years to come out at Citi Field at spring training and as a part of the New York Mets family because,
Thank you.
you know, thanks. Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to be here with you.
Okay, pleasure.